All right, let's go ahead and try to restart this if we can. Let's see if the internet is any better. I don't know if it's going to be better, but anyways. So, as usual, I got a few things I want to talk about, and we're not going to do the intro again, but yeah, let's see how this works. Let's see how this goes, okay? It's a good thing that I had a couple drinks before, so I'm not all stressed out and freaked out about it. So, you know, let's see how this goes. All right. Before it cut out last time, I'll say it again right now. We don't talk politics on this channel. I don't get involved in all that kind of stuff, but I do want to say that I hope you guys get out and exercise you guys' right to vote. Okay. Either way, it doesn't matter to me which side you guys lean on. I'm not that kind of a person that has opinions on that. I just want you guys to get out there and vote. Okay. So when the election comes up, you guys do your research and make an educated vote either way, whichever way you believe. Okay. All right. So had a couple videos. Alex, thank you so very much. Yeah. I have really good internet. That's what's weird. I don't know what the buffering was about. I have 37 up right now. Yeah, I don't have fiber. Of course, I don't have fiber up. But anyways, it's all good. So this last week, I had a couple videos come out that I want to talk about. But before I get into that, I wanted to say thank you again. I've been trying to address this a little bit more as we go. Thank you so very much to the supporters. Okay. I don't do enough to thank you guys, the Patreon patrons, the YouTube channel members, all you guys that are watching these videos in general. You guys are helping to support the channel. Okay. Even just simply watching the video, it really helps. Okay. So thank you guys so very much. Leaving feedback, giving thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you feel. Okay. It definitely helps the channel. So thank you guys. Okay. All right. If you, excuse me. As usual, if you guys have questions, excuse me, something in my throat. If you guys have questions or things that you want me to address, please put them in caps lock. It helps me to see it, okay? And if I don't answer your question, keep throwing it in caps lock until myself or a moderator tells you to stop, okay? All right, let's go ahead and get on with this. Let me see. Yeah, no, I'm not moving to Missouri, yike. All right, so the last couple videos that I had, hurry, the exhaust fan is not working. That was an interesting one. So that was 10:15, okay? And I got to give Green Heck exhaust fans some props, okay? Because I shared criticism with Green Heck exhaust fans on that video. The reason why I shared criticism was because I know people from their company watch my videos. Now, I love their exhaust fans. If I have a choice, I usually sell a Green Heck exhaust fan. Those are the ones that I usually sell. But I was really frustrated with that service call because of the way that they put together that the taper bushing style hub on that wheel. Okay, it really kind of bummed me out and bothered me. Cooling and refrigeration guy, thank you so very much. I really appreciate that super chat, bud. Thank you. That is awesome, man. So, yeah, I was really frustrated with that exhaust fan, and I shared some frustrations, okay? And if you guys go back to that video, okay, again, it was called Hurry, the exhaust fan is not working. Look at the top comment. I pinned it all the way at the top because it was the product manager for that particular line of exhaust fans actually replied to my frustration in the video. And he had a very honest apology, but then also reason as to why he used that wheel and hub assembly that he did in that fan, okay? Now, we still don't completely agree on the reasoning. Like, you know, it's still frustrating for me as a technician because, like you said in the video, all you do, or in the comment, all you do is push the hub all the way down to the bottom of the shaft, and that's where the wheel sits. And that was great knowing that information from the manufacturer. But on a Friday night or whatever day it was, at nighttime when I'm trying to put that exhaust fan back together, I didn't know that. So in order to put that thing on there, it was just like a mess, you know, it was frustrating. So, but I got to give them props for owning up to the mistake of not tightening down the set screw. That was their only mistake, was not tightening down the set screw, okay? But as far as giving me an explanation as to why he went with that hub assembly that he did, that was really cool of them to own up to that, okay? So I got to give them props on that one. They were really cool. So on that one too, I also showed that crazy messed up roof on top of that bank next door. Guys, that's insane, okay? I got a bunch of comments about that. I shared some stuff within my or within the HVAC Overtime on their channel too, and showed like the headaches. If you guys remember in that video, I showed at the end of it, there was a brand new bank that was being built, and they installed 3 new package units, I think, and it was just a mess on the roof. And I think I commented in the video, like, honestly, it was so bad that it looked like the general contractor did the work himself. I know they had an air conditioning company doing the duct work, but I have a feeling that they had electricians, plumbers, and the general contractor installed the units on the roof themselves. And it wasn't the HVAC contractor. Because if it was the HVAC contractor, that's insane. Like, to install the exhaust vent 4 inches away from that wall, that's a fire hazard. Like, that's not good. You know, over time, that wall is going to turn black. And then how does that unit ever even get serviced? Like, that's insane, okay? All right. Why don't I use alignment tools for belts and pulleys? Because, be honest with you, I was never taught to use alignment tools, but that's no excuse for not using them. In my research and investigation, Brad, thank you so very much for becoming a channel supporter and upgrading your support status. Thank you so very much, Brad. That is awesome, bud. So in my research, basically, just, you know, the small little air conditioners and exhaust fans that I'm working on, I have yet to find an alignment tool or anything like that that is feasible for me to purchase, right? That's economically feasible and or that would actually fit in the small compartments that I work in. I work on small little exhaust fans, and for the most part, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, if someone out there has a better way for me to do it, I'm always looking for feedback. I'm always looking to improve, okay? So please, certainly, send me an email at hvacrvideos@gmail.com if you have something to share. But my research, the pulley alignment tools and all that different stuff, nothing will fit in these tiny little fans that I'm working on. So I've been able to use an eyeball really well. I've been able to use some straight edges to kind of get you in the ballpark. And I'm going to be honest with you, for the most part, I can get pretty darn close with an eyeball if you know how to look at the way that the belts ride in the pulley and different things like that. Now, I realize that when you get into like heavy industrial and process machinery and different stuff like that, of course, you've got to get a lot more precise with your alignment. But when it comes to most of these little AC units and stuff, it does pretty good for me. So again, if you have something to share with me, a better way to do it, send me an email. I'm always willing to read. All right, let's see what else. How do I remove wrong refrigerant contaminated inside of a system? So if you have a system that potentially has the wrong refrigerant inside of it, what I would suggest that you do is just go ahead and recover the refrigerant into an empty vacuum down cylinder. Go ahead and mark that cylinder and take it to the supply house and just tell them it's mixed refrigerant, that you don't know what it is. They'll usually take it back. My local supply house doesn't even really charge you anything extra. I've had supply houses in the past that have charged me extra, but, oh, excuse me, yawning. What are my thoughts on WACO connectors? So WACO connectors are new to me. I just started seeing them popping up on a lot of the R290 equipment. True Refrigeration, no, Delfield Refrigeration is using them now. I think True uses them too, to be honest with you. But yeah, they're new to me. I have nothing bad to say about them. I haven't seen anything bad. Now, I have heard horror stories from other people, you know, about them not making tight connections and things shorting out or the WACO connectors burning or melting. But I have yet to see that. So I got nothing bad to say about them. To be honest with you, when I go to my local supply house, they've got electrical fittings on the wall, or I go to my local hardware store, Home Depot or Lowe's or something, and pick up electrical fittings. I usually just grab whatever they have because it's always worked for me. But it's interesting that you asked that question because I have been kind of looking into a little bit more into the WACO connectors, and I'm intrigued by them. I just don't want to create more problems with them too. So, all right, let's see what else we got in here. Why would a Jade controller error out with a CO2 fault when there's no CO2 system installed? Michael Buckley. Okay, so I am not a Jade expert, right? The Jade is Honeywell's proprietary economizer controller that they created. It actually makes working on an economizer so much easier. If you guys haven't checked out the Jade controller, do so, okay? It's my favorite, to be honest with you. Even over the Belimo system, I like the Jade. But as far as a system that potentially has a CO2 error when there's no CO2 sensors or anything hooked up to it, more than likely, I would assume that you have a bad Jade controller. I would be kind of curious to know where the Jade controller is installed. Oftentimes, they'll get installed in the return air section, and if so, they can be damaged by moisture and different things like that, so be very careful. Brad, thank you so very much for that super chat, man. That is, my goodness gracious, bud. Thank you. That is awesome. You guys, I'm going to address this. I say this every time. The super chats, the channel support, all that different stuff. It is awesome. Thank you so very much, guys, but it is not, you don't have to do it. I'm going to continue to do these live streams and make these videos even if you guys don't do it, okay? I do appreciate it, though. It does help me out, but again, I enjoy doing this stuff, and that's why I do it. So, Merritt, thank you so very much for becoming a channel supporter, bud. That is awesome. All right, let me see. All right. I'm going to make this clear right now, too. Guys, we don't cover politics in this chat. We don't cover politics on this stream. We're going to leave that outside of it. If you guys have something to share with me that you want to talk political or something like that, feel free to send me an email, but we're not going to make it a public forum because I don't impose my beliefs on other people, and I don't want other people to impose their beliefs on other people within my chat or within my videos. Okay, we just keep that out of here. All right, let's see what else. Thank you guys all very much for the nice words of encouragement and stuff that I see inside of here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get to my list of things. Oh, great. I'm going to cover this right now. Okay, so accidents happen. In my most recent video, I dropped a compressor. That sucked, right? And I'm going to be honest with you. When it happened, it's funny. I had another technician with me on the roof, and I had someone else up on the roof too. And I had told the other person, like, hey, I just dropped this compressor. Like, what the heck, you know? I for a second thought, you know what, I need to edit that out of my video. But then I thought, you know what? No. I've been trying to make an honest effort to show more and more of my mistakes to you guys because we all make them, okay? Guys, I've burnt components up. I've never dropped a compressor before. That was a first. Luckily, it wasn't a long distance. Okay, so what kind of damage could have happened within that compressor? Well, I'm not super familiar with the LG compressors. I don't know their durability or their quality. Okay, they just started popping up in the Linux units, and every once in a while you see them popping up in a Heatcraft unit. I haven't had any bad things to say about them. As far as a Copeland compressor, I'm picturing a scroll compressor, and I can't really see anything inside of a scroll compressor that would really get damaged unless you really dropped it off of a 20-foot roof or something like that. For the most part, the components in the compressor are pretty solid in there. As far as the LG compressors, I don't know. I mean, there's not a whole lot that I can think of that would be damaged inside that compressor for the small little, 24 inches that I dropped it or whatever, or 12 inches, whatever it was. I can't think of anything, but I mean, there's always the possibility. Okay. So, the next video that I released was the AC has been flat for a long time. And that was the one that I dropped the compressor. Not only did I drop the compressor, but I showed you guys how I actually dropped my torch too. Okay. And I said, when I dropped my torch while it was still lit, this is why you always want to prepare for the worst. Okay. Now, whenever I was up on that unit, I had a water hose handy. I had wet towels handy. I had everything handy just in case a potential fire had started. Okay. You always want to be prepared for the worst in hopes that it doesn't happen, but at least you were prepared. Okay. Mistakes do happen. Obviously, dropping the torch was an unexcusable mistake. That was ridiculously bad. Okay. And, there's no excuse for that, but I did it and I have to own up to it, and it happened. Okay. So in that video too, I wanted to kind of address the fact that that system had been flat for 2 years, guys. Okay. I don't want to go into crazy details on it, but that thing was flat on install and startup. I noted it. Okay. I went through all the proper channels to make sure that it got taken care of under warranty. It didn't happen. So be it. 2 years later, the AC was still down. I had to fix it. Okay. So I went ahead and fixed it, but before I did, I bumped the compressor. I did get some questions. Hey, how come I bump started that compressor? Someone had asked me a comment in one of my videos that I always said, do not push in contactors on systems with VFDs. And that is a good point. You don't want to push in the VFD contactor or anything associated with the VFD contactor. I pushed in the compressor contactor. There was nothing wrong with that. There wasn't a VFD on the compressor. All was good on that situation, okay? So on that thing, I went ahead and changed the oil. Why did I feel the need to change the oil on that? Well, it had been sitting flat for almost 2 years near the ocean. So there's salt water in the air. It's been in a high moisture laden environment where the equalizer tube has just been getting, the moisture from the indoor blower section right there inside there. So I felt the need to do everything that I could. So I went ahead and put high capacity liquid line and suction line dryers on there. and I went ahead and changed the oil, okay? Because that oil, in my opinion, would have been beyond saturated, and I don't think it would have been savable. I don't think you would have gotten all the moisture out of that oil. In fact, they pretty much say it's almost impossible to get all the moisture out of POE oil. So that's why I changed the oil in that one, okay? All right, let me look at the chat and see what I'm missing in here. Again, I really appreciate the words of encouragement. I see them, all kinds of them. They're awesome, guys. Thank you so very much. Any tips on getting a job in the field while going to school? Okay, Javier, I'm going to cover that at the same time while I cover. Let me see this one. There was another really good question right here. And hold on. Oh, come on. It's right here. Where is it? Forgive me, I don't have your name right here, but there was another gentleman that asked a question. He's in the Marine Corps right now, and he is getting ready to finish his duties or his obligations to the Marine Corps, and he's going to get out. And he was curious how he could get a leg up if he got into the industry, okay, and what he could do to help himself out. So Javier, and forgive me, I don't have your name for the other gentleman. I'm going to address both of your questions right now. So if you're in the Marine Corps, or if you were in the Marine Corps, hopefully you took advantage of the education benefits that you have and potentially went to school and or got job training while you were in the service, okay? If you didn't, be sure to take advantage of your guys' options to be able to get that education, because we all know that in the service you don't get paid enough money, so you need to take advantage of every opportunity that you have while you're in the service. So the education opportunities are amazing, okay? So make sure you do that. As far as when you get out, how to get one up. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but first off, be respectful, send an email, make a phone call, and go make a site visit at whatever company you potentially want to work with. Now, here's an important thing to understand. Make sure that I'm sorry, I forgot my train. I lost my train of thought right there, but make sure that you're totally lost my train of thought. Wow. Jelly brain right now. Wow. Okay, hold on. All right. So as far as how I think you can have a leg up, obviously go into the job interview, get a letter of recommendation from your commanding officer or something like that. Okay. Walk into a company, a job interview, present yourself. And the best way that I could tell anybody, even the gentleman that is fresh out of school and he wants to get a job in the industry, okay, is be honest and be willing to work. So walk into that place and offer. Here's what I suggest. Okay. Now you have to make sure that this is legal in the different areas. In California, this isn't legal, but maybe it is where you're at. Go to a company and offer to work with them for a couple days. Offer to do ride-alongs. Offer to do, just ride-alongs just to go with them. So that way you can kind of see how things work within their operation. And then also they can see your work ethics and how you're willing to learn. Okay. Very important. Now, if you're in school or you're just finishing school, same thing. Go knock on their door and say, hey, you know what? I'm a new graduate, or I'm still in school, whatever it may be. And I really want to get into this trade. So I would really like to do a ride along with you guys to potentially, where they don't have to pay you, or maybe they will. I don't know. And just be willing to work your butt off. Okay. Remember, though, that you're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you, okay? I feel like I kind of lost my train of thought on what I wanted to say about that, so feel free, both of you guys, to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com, and we can continue this conversation. I'm sure I'll remember a few more things that I wanted to say about those two questions, okay? All right, let me see what else it is here. All right. How do I test a liquid line solenoid valve that might not be opening fully during a call for cooling? That is a really interesting question. As far as how to test a liquid line solenoid valve that's not operating fully, I would imagine that if it's not fully operating, that there would be a pressure drop across that valve. Now, every liquid line solenoid valve is going to have some sort of a pressure drop. You should be able to lean on the manufacturer to find out how much of a pressure drop there is on that valve. So I would lean on the manufacturer, figure out what the pressure drop is. Now, it's very important that you understand how to properly size a liquid line solenoid valve, okay? With that being said, you do not size a liquid line solenoid valve based off of the line sizes. The line sizes, I could give a crap about, okay? What you want to look at is the amount of refrigerant that can flow through that valve, okay? What type of valve it is. And you want to look at the manufacturer's sizing instructions, okay? The size of the lines going in and out of the valve kind of comes last, all right? If you're lucky, you might find, if you have a 3/8 inch liquid line, you might find a valve that works properly for the system that you're going to work on, and you can go with a 3/8. But it's not the end of the world if you have to go with a 1/2 inch and step it down with a bushing or something like that, depending on the size of your system, okay? So make sure that you're sizing the valve accordingly. And I would imagine, again, I don't know your situation, but I would imagine that there would be some sort of a pressure drop across that valve if there was a problem. So measure that pressure drop and then kind of go from there. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Guys, do me a favor, please smash the thumbs up button on the stream. It'll really, really help out the stream if you can, please. All right. I'm going to get to my list of things to talk about. So the last video that I released was the Compressor Superheat video, and that was actually a really short video today, and that was kind of showcasing the new field piece large pipe clamp that I have right here. Okay, this is the wireless large pipe clamp, goes to 4 1/8 of an inch right here. I made that video for field piece just to try to help them out. Now, Alex, thank you so very much for that super chat. That video that I released today is actually a very small segment of a full-length video that I am releasing on Thursday. Okay, I just was able to cut out that little portion about compressor superheat. Now I'm going to show the full system repair. It's a walk-in cooler that I was having problems with. You guys will see everything come Thursday. It's scheduled to upload at my normal time, 11:45 a.m. Thursday. That's Pacific time on Thursday. Okay, so you guys will see that upload, and then you'll get the full explanation on that video of the repair and showing all that different stuff. So Robert had asked me an interesting question. He sent me an email, and he's working on a Delfield refrigerator, and he was very curious about a problem that he was having. He's running a Delfield refrigerator with dual evaporators on the bottom and a cold rail on the top, and he was having some freeze-up problems on the bottom. So I am going to cover this as best as possible on a live stream and just kind of give you some quick tips here, Robert, okay? First off, you mentioned in your video that the unit had a defrost clock. Okay, on those Delfield F18 refrigerators, because that's what he's working on those F18 refrigerators, if they did come with a defrost, typically the defrost clock only turned off the top section, and it's really just an off-cycle timer for the top section so that way it can defrost properly. Usually they did not affect the bottom section or the bottom solenoid valve, so keep that in mind. That unit doesn't have defrost, okay? Here's where I want to kind of make this make sense for everybody. When you're working on prep tables, it's best to stay with the OEM control strategy. And what I mean by that is on the bottom section, Robert's having problems with the unit freezing up. I don't know Robert's situation. I would only assume that it still has the OEM controls in it, but it's very important to leave the OEM controls in there whenever possible, okay? The reason why is if you're working on a Delfield control or a Delfield system, they typically have constant cut-in controls. Most of the Delfields that I have worked on, they either have a mechanical constant cut-in control or they have a new digital control. The defrost is typically built into the digital control. If you're having freeze-up issues with a digital control on a Delfield unit, what I would highly suggest is checking the sensors. There's typically 2 sensors on it, an evaporator sensor and an air sensor. Make sure that the sensors ohm out to the proper settings. If the evaporator temperature sensor is bad, then the unit might not defrost, okay? And that might cause your freezing up issues, okay? So if your temperature controllers and everything are working properly, then you want to start investigating the superheat on your expansion valves, checking to make sure that you have the proper, I think Delfield wants 8 degrees superheat on those bottom expansion valves. You want to reach out to them and kind of see what they want and verify from there, okay? I'm not going to go too much further into it, but I would really make sure that you have OEM controls in there, check the sensors, understand the sequence of operation, okay? And then for everybody else that doesn't know what I'm talking about, whenever you're working on these things, you want to try to stay OEM, okay? It's so much easier if you stay OEM. It takes the guesswork out of it. If you put in an aftermarket control on a Delfield Reach and that had an OEM constant cut-in or evaporator sensing control, then you no longer have that evaporator sensing ability, okay? So you want to be very cautious about that. All right, next question I have. Justin had asked me, he sent me an email. He watched one of my previous videos from like a year and a half ago, and he was curious about my van tour. I did a van tour a year and a half, whatever it was ago, showing a new van that I had, and it had a drop-down ladder on the top. What I mean by that is you had the assembly that you pulled down and it brought the extension ladder down to the side of the van, so that way it made it easier for a technician to get, you know, the ladder off the top of the thing. And he was kind of curious about what my thoughts were about that ladder. So I really don't like those ladder assemblies. I don't care for the drop down assembly. It's very awkward to me. All the vans seem to be coming with those drop down things, and I've really thought hard about going back to the normal ladder setups. Now, I never had the ladder setup that came off the back of the van, but I always had the one that just you released a chingus on the side and you pulled the ladder off and you used leverage to get the ladder up. I was always so used to that. So I really don't care for the drop down ladders. I understand the need on the big Sprinter type vans that you can stand up in where you can't get to the top of your van. But when I'm dealing with a normal Chevy Express van, you know, Robert, thank you so very much for that super chat, bud. That is awesome. So when I deal with I understand you guys need them on those Sprinter vans, but I deal with a Chevy Express and I don't need a tall ladder that I can reach to the top of the ladder rack. So, all right, let me see what else we got in here. Oh, great question. So Chad had sent me an email and he asked me about approach temperature. And he said, what the heck is approach temperature? I know that's confusing. I see it come up quite often on Facebook in the different groups, people asking, what is approach temperature? Okay, approach temperature is something, it's not just a Linux thing, but Linux uses it and has used it for a very long time. Okay, approach temperature is an easier way to check condenser performance. Okay, so what they're doing is they're taking liquid line surface temperature coming out of the condenser, okay, comparing it to outdoor ambient temperature. Okay, liquid line surface temperature should be higher than the outdoor ambient temperature. And Linux has a metric they typically have on their units, even on their residential units, that they want you to use approach temperature instead of subcooling to check for proper refrigerant charge, okay? Now, you got to be careful when you're working on Linux units because they do tell you, they have a caveat on the side of their commercial units that says your normal operating pressure should be somewhat around this range, and then once you get them around this range, you dial in the charge via the approach temperature. And it also says that approach temperature is not valid at all for a grossly undercharged or a grossly overcharged system. So if it's got way too much gas in it, approach isn't going to help. If it's got way too little gas in it, approach isn't going to help. You need to get, you know, pretty close to the factory charge, and then you dial in via approach. One of the cool things I will say about approach temperature is it does not use saturation temperatures. So you are not technically having to put your service gauges on there. Now, you got to be careful, though, because I did tell you that Linux says the pressures need to be somewhat close to factory specs. So, but if you have the system operating properly, right, you can kind of do a non-invasive system test by just checking approach temperature. Once you know that nobody else has touched it, you know, you can just do a normal PM on it, check the approach temperature, and you could probably be pretty good. All right, let's see what else we got in here. I saw a super chat come through. Thank you so very much, I think. Yeah, oh, I already addressed that one, Robert. Thank you. All right, original equipment, OEM, original equipment manufacturer. OEM means you can use any parts from any other parts of the unit or manufacturers. Wait, what? Original equipment, OEM equals original equipment manufacturer. OEM means you can use any parts from any of the other parts of the unit's manufacturer. Yeah, I don't know what, that's confusing the heck out of me. All right, you need to make a tally of how many times I say Chingus. Yeah, I say Chingus a lot. Guys, Chingus basically just means if I can't remember what the word is or what I'm trying to describe, I call it a Chingus. So, what was the loudest fan motor that had to be replaced? That's a good question, John Deere fan. I mean, those air moving fans on top of that shopping mall in that mezzanine, those things were pretty loud. When those things all get running, you almost need ear protection when you're on top of that mezzanine working on those walk-in coolers. All right, let me see what else. Ben had asked me about system vitals, and this was actually a really good question, Ben. So Ben was curious about when a manufacturer's data is missing, okay, especially in Ben's case, really old equipment. How does he know what's superheat, what's subcooling, any of that stuff when you have really old equipment and you can't find data, okay? First off, I'm going to say that MeasureQuick can really help you out if you do not have that information, because MeasureQuick has a lot of rules of thumb built into it, okay? Also, you need to just do some normal troubleshooting skills, okay? Understand something. An expansion valve system, okay? Doesn't matter if it's residential, doesn't matter if it's commercial. If it has an expansion valve, at the expansion valve going into the valve, you need a solid column of liquid. With that being said, You can check for subcooling, okay? Now, the question may be, or you can put a sight glass on the system, but you got to be careful. Just because it has a sight glass and the sight glass is clear doesn't necessarily mean it's fully charged, okay? Be very cautious about that. A sight glass is literally a window into the system at that point in the system, and it's not telling you anything else, okay? It just tells you that at that point, you've got a solid column of liquid. Have had this happen many times too, where people will call me and say, yeah, the sight glass is clear, but in all actuality, it was completely empty, because a clear sight glass and an empty sight glass can look very similar. So you have to know how to check. Okay. So if you're dealing with a refrigeration system, there's lots of rules of thumb out there. You always want to try to lean on the manufacturer if you can. If you can't get a hold of them, you can use some basic ones. Okay. If you're working on a low temp freezer, you want typically 6 to 8 degrees of superheat for the evaporator. Okay. If you're working on a medium temperature walk-in cooler, you want 8 to 10 degrees, sometimes 12 degrees of superheat on the evaporator. If you're working on an air conditioning system with a fixed orifice metering device, you typically want to use target superheat to calculate your proper superheat at the system superheat. But when you're dealing with air conditioning systems, you got to be very careful, because you really don't want to be checking system vitals, superheat, subcooling if you don't have proper airflow. Got to make sure you have airflow. So there's a lot of things going on. Same thing goes for refrigeration too. You need to understand the basic sequence of operation to kind of know, hey, this system's doing, everything it can, and then we're going to go ahead and dial in the superheat, the subcooling, whatever it may be. So I don't have an answer to your exact question, what vitals you're looking for on a chiller, all this different stuff. But I just kind of use deductive reasoning and use some common sense skills. Okay, do I have subcooling coming out of the condenser? Okay, I have some subcooling, so more than likely at that point, I've got liquid refrigerant. Now, is it still liquid once it gets to the expansion valve? Okay, there's a lot of things going on there. Does the system have a head pressure control valve? Is it a built-up system? Does it have a receiver? Does it have an expansion valve? There's a lot of variables in there, and you have to understand basic sequence of operation when it comes to refrigeration or air conditioning. So if I kind of feel like I didn't answer a lot of your question there, bud, but send me an email. I can try to answer it a little bit more, okay? All right, let's see what we got going in here. Big Nate, you ask a really interesting question. What is the best flavor of ice cream? I'll give you the answer to that. That is a super, super easy question. It's pralines and pecan, dude. That's the absolute best ice cream out there is pralines and pecan. You guys can fight me over that one. There's no better ice cream than pralines and pecan. Plain and simple. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Opinions on the R290 air conditioners and servicing them. I've yet to see an R290 air conditioner. I've heard of R32 in an air conditioner, but never heard of R290 quite yet. But I work on R290 refrigerators all the time. I'm not afraid of them. I'm not scared of them. Just some new procedures you got to follow. So when it does start coming up in air conditioning systems too, it's just going to be the same thing. Just got to make sure you're pulling proper evacuations. If you are pressure testing the system, you're pressure testing with a non-combustible gas. Don't use oxygen or anything like that, okay? And that you're purging the system before you braze. You're cutting components out as much as possible. You have all your safety procedures nearby. You have a combustible gas leak detector. Just be very, very careful. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Let me see what I'm missing. I want to see these opinions on the best ice cream in the world, okay? Cookies and cream. Get out of here with your cookies and cream. Come on, man. Pralines and pecan is the best. So, all right, cool. Great question, or great point, okay? So I posted something talking about compressor superheat today. And Cameron from HVAC Radio, which is a new podcast. I'm just some really nice guys. It's Cameron, Ulysses Palacios. I hope I'm not butchering your name, Ulysses. I keep saying it that way. Ruben Macias, Rookie Refrigeration, Chad, and then Cameron have a podcast together. And Cameron actually chimed in on my post today about compressor superheat. And he wanted to point out the fact, and something that I should say is that and I'm going to kind of elaborate a little bit more, too, on his point. But he said that sometimes you want to pay more attention to return gas temperature, okay, or suction gas temperature coming back, as opposed to the actual compressor superheat. And what he was kind of saying, and it kind of makes sense too, is you always want to lean on the manufacturer, okay? The manufacturer designed their equipment to operate a certain way. So there's times that you're going to run a higher than normal compressor superheat depending on what's going on, okay? Maybe they've got a subcooler on the system. Maybe, who knows? There's all kinds of weird things that can lead you to run a little bit higher than normal compressor superheat. So again, it's safe to say that for the most part, you want to have a minimum of 20 degrees compressor superheat coming back. You want to have a maximum of 30-ish degrees. I think I said 35. But still, those are rules of thumb, okay? Because the manufacturer may design something differently, okay? Maybe they've got a DTC valve on that compressor that's helping to cool it more or something like that, okay? So always want to lean on the manufacturers of the equipment to kind of see how they designed it to know what's going on in there, okay? All right. Let me see what else we got in here. On a lockout relay, how does the common side actually form a common? How does the common side... On a lockout relay, I don't know which relay you're talking about. For the most part, it just creates a holding circuit. So what happens is when a pressure controller or something... See, it's really hard to describe this over the... a live stream, but basically it just creates a holding circuit. Whatever happened to actuate that lockout, it closed a circuit and it doesn't let it reset until you usually power something down. Again, send me an email. We can talk a little bit more about it. All right. All right. There's nothing really going on in there. So I'm going to go ahead and, go through my list of things. So this was actually a really interesting question too. Dino had asked this on my last live stream and I never got a chance to address it. He mentioned it again in one of my videos and I'm going to address it right now. So how do I handle the mask wearing stuff when I'm working with other employees? Okay. So when I'm working with my guys on the roof, we're in close proximity, different things like that. Now, do not use me as an example. Do as I say, not as I do. Obviously, you guys want to protect yourself as much as possible. Now, when I am on the roof with another one of my employees, we do not wear masks, okay? It'd be one thing if we were like up in each other's faces and we didn't want to cough on each other, but when we're up in the open air, we're not wearing masks at all, okay? Now, we respect everybody. I respect restaurant rules. In fact, I was working at a restaurant today, and the manager, when I walked in the door, I pulled up my mask and she said, "Oh, you don't need to worry about that here." And I said, "No, out of respect for you guys in your establishment, I'm going to wear my mask when I'm in your restaurant." Even if the manager said I didn't have to, okay? So I respect everybody. My opinion is my opinion, but my opinion does not belong to me when I am at work, okay? When I am at work, I represent the company that I work for, and I'm going to do everything that I can to make myself look professional and proper. But when I'm on the roof with one of my employees and they're okay with it and I'm okay with it, we don't wear our masks, okay? But that's our personal choice, okay? Again, I'm looking out for my company though, all right? So my personal choice is when I'm not bothering the customer, when I'm in an open environment with one of my employees, I'm not going to have my mask on. It'd be one thing if he was coughing or I was worried about it or we were like really close together, maybe, okay? But up there, we don't do anything with that. Now, we also have to be very careful. Again, being a business owner, you got to follow proper safety guidelines, all that fancy stuff, because you're just setting yourself up for liability and stuff. All right, let's see what else. What do I think of older condensing furnaces like you have up north? You have one and you're not sure about what brand. I mean, a condensing furnace, I have nothing bad to say about them. I will say that a condensing furnace requires more maintenance as far as that goes, because you typically have your secondary heat exchanger. So you got to make sure that secondary heat exchanger stays clean. And I will say that oftentimes on the secondary heat exchangers, they're a little difficult to get into. So you got to make sure that you keep those units, keep your filters changed, keep them maintained properly. Also make sure that they're commissioned properly and that your gas valves are set properly, that you don't have restrictions in your exhaust piping. But I mean, I don't know what your question is per se. I got nothing bad to say about them. Just make sure that they're installed properly. John, thank you so very much for that super chat, man. That is awesome. Let me see what else we got in here. What am I missing? Yeah. Was there a mistake that caused an entire building to lose power? Yeah, I've done that before. No, not an entire building. I've shut down panels, though, by accidentally grounding out a compressor I think I mentioned that recently on my video. Not checking for a direct short to ground and resetting a breaker, or replacing fuses and resetting a disconnect when it had a grounded compressor. And then it tripped the main that controlled multiple things. And then when I went to go reset the main was actually broken internally, so it wouldn't reset. And then the customer had to go through a weekend, I think it was, without, it was a golf course. They had to go through a weekend without that entire main panel because they couldn't get the breaker over the weekend. But I've never shut down an entire building, no. All right. Any advice when working on an exhaust that has no data tag, it has been altered to replace, and getting proper airflow for the kitchen hood? Oh, Jason, that is a really loaded question. That is very difficult, bud. As far as your exhaust fan is operating, the only thing as a technician that you can do is make it operate properly, okay? I am not a design engineer. In fact, I don't even have the tools to measure airflow through an exhaust fan. Now, you can go get one. There's a couple different people that make special flow. It's not even a flow hood. It's a special grid that you use to measure surface velocity, basically, at exhaust filters, essentially. I can't think of the name of it right now. Gosh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. But anyways, they make special flow hoods, let's just call it that for the sake of being easy, that measure airflow. They have to be higher CFM hoods. You can measure the airflow, but it's really difficult as a technician. I don't have those tools and I can't measure it. So all that I can do is get the exhaust fan operating properly. Now, if I'm still having airflow issues, then what I'm probably going to try to do is get a design engineer involved. Your best bet is to reach out to one of these exhaust fan manufacturers, such as Greenheck or Captive Air, and they'll actually have design engineers, and they can come out and measure and size up and give quotes for systems. They can give quotes to you or give quotes directly to the customer and size up proper equipment. But sizing exhaust fans to make sure that they were sized correctly in the first place can be a chore for sure if you don't have the proper hoods and tools to measure the airflow. All right. Let me see. Have I ever caused a major fire? No, I have not. Do scroll compressors have built-in discharge check valves? Honestly, I'm trying to think. I don't even know if a Copeland has a built-in check valve. I mean, they have. Yeah, that's a good question. You'd have to lean on the manufacturers to see. I don't know that answer. All right. Did I know we're actually at 45% views to likes ratio? I don't know what that means, but thank you very much. Oh, you mean views to? Yeah, I don't even know. All right. York is the least tech-friendly brand. Change your mind. Yeah. Okay, let's put it like this. I'm not a fan of York equipment, but I will say that I know people that love York equipment and hate Lennox equipment, okay? It really comes down to what you're comfortable working on. I work on Lennox package units and Carrier package units, Delfield refrigerators, Manitowoc ice machines all day long. I used to hate Manitowoc ice machines. I used to hate Delfield refrigerators. But once you work on them every day in and out and you get so used to their quirks and little problems, you actually start to like working on them. So I'm not going to say it's really a problem against York. While I do have some beef with them about some very ridiculously stupid screw placements on some of their equipment, I will say that I'm just not super comfortable with them, okay? The same thing goes for like an isomatic ice machine. I don't work on them very often. So when it comes time to work on one, it's like I have to stop and think. Versus with a Manitowoc or a Hoshizaki, I don't have to think too hard because I'm comfortable, okay? So it's not necessarily that they're always a crappy brand, I feel. It's just sometimes that I'm not comfortable working on them. I'm just not used to it. All right. If you like York, you're a psychopath. That's true. All right. Can I talk about twinning two furnaces with one thermostat? Tyler Brown, honestly, I'd not be the person to answer that one, okay? I do know that many manufacturers have technical bulletins on twinning their furnaces, so I would tell you to lean on the manufacturer and follow their installation instructions, okay? Depending on what type of circuit boards and different things that it has, if they're communicating. So you always want to lean on the manufacturer to make sure that you go through the proper procedures to twin it properly. All right, let's see what else. Those that run, okay, so when to adjust. Oh yeah, I kind of already answered that one question. Okay, so oh, great question. Jason had asked a question about the Field Piece Job Link probes. Okay, so this is the new large pipe clamp for Field Piece, and I have psychrometers and pressure probes and different things like that. And Jason said he asked a really valid question, something that I've been a little bit concerned about too. How do I know that this is accurate? Good question. How do I know that my pressure probes are accurate? How do I know that the psychrometers are accurate? So what I typically do, that's a good question. There's no way to in the field to calibrate them. I mean, besides zeroing them out when you know, at the certain atmospheric pressure you're at, as far as the pressure probes, but there's no way to calibrate the temperature probes at the temperature clamps. So I usually just compare them to a known source. So I typically will have a thermocouple probe that I'll dip in ice water every once in a blue moon, verify that it's accurate, okay, and then I will clamp it to a pipe, put it in the airstream, and compare my psychrometers to them. So just find a known source that you know is accurate and compare the field piece probes to them. Now, I will say that I've compared the field piece probes in many different times to known sources that were accurate, and they have been very, very accurate. I've yet to have a problem with one of them, but that's my experience, okay? So I do get this question a lot too, and this is something that I definitely want to address, okay? Is system additives. In my most recent video, someone said, hey, if I was worried about potential acid in that air conditioner that had been open for 2 years, why did I not install an acid inhibitor or an acid neutralizer in it, okay? I also get this, hey, why don't I install leak sealers in my equipment and dye and different things like that? Now, I'm not going to lie and say I've never used any of those things, okay? I've used dye probably on 3 or 4 occasions. It's bit me in the ass almost every time because it's a mess and it's still in those systems. But I've yet to see a problem with the dye, okay? But I just don't like it. As far as leak sealers, as a last resort for like 2 or 3 customers, I've installed a leak sealer in a system and I've seen no good results whatsoever from any of those leak sealers. I typically don't want to do that, and I warn the customer against using any additives. Now, what about acid neutralizers or acid scavenger or whatever you want to insert name of whatever brand here, okay? Personally, I don't use them anymore, but I will say that for the first good 3/4 of my career, I used acid neutralizers on every single burnout, okay? And I still have equipment out there running to this day that has had acid neutralizers put into it. I have personally chosen not to use system additives anymore after reading some stuff on my own, hearing some podcasts talking about it, and just kind of chosen to not do that. Most manufacturers don't want you to put any acid neutralizers, any inhibitors, anything in the system that didn't come in the system. Now, I will say you need to be very, very careful when you go to a supply house and they hand you a dye pack or they hand you an acid neutralizer and it says OEM approved. What does that mean? It means that at least one OEM or original equipment manufacturer said that it was okay. It doesn't mean that everyone is okay. You may see like a dye that says Copeland approved, but if you read in the tech details, it says Copeland approved for this particular compressor in this particular situation. So don't ever trust the supply houses when they say it's OEM approved or manufacturer approved. Manufacturer is a vague term. Which manufacturer? There's a bunch of them, right? So just because a dye pack or an additive or a supply house tells you that it's safe doesn't mean it's safe. What I would encourage you to do is reach out to the manufacturer's rep. If you want to use a leak sealer, right, and you want to use it on a system, call your supply house and ask them for your Copeland compressor rep or your LG compressor rep or your Tecumseh compressor rep. Insert name of whatever compressor here. Ask them for the rep's name and phone number because all of them have local representatives here. Call the rep, leave them a voicemail, say, hey, you know what? The supply house is telling me this is a good choice, and ask the rep what he thinks. I can pretty much guarantee you that almost all compressor manufacturers you call, they're going to say, no, don't use dye, don't use additives, don't use leak sealers, don't use any of that stuff because they're not going to warranty it, okay? Same thing goes for like things that were, you know, the crap that they would put in there to try to unstick the sticky TXVs and stuff like that. Go ask the manufacturers. They're going to say, don't put that crap in there, okay? So be very cautious about putting additives in systems. I've made a personal choice to not do it anymore. I'm not saying that I'll never use an additive again, but at this point in time, I'm not using any of them, okay? All right, let's see what else. As far as... Okay, wait. So Carlos is saying, you live in Las Vegas. It's very dry and desert place, and you want to know, is it safe to eliminate a suction dryer when changing a compressor? Okay, so suction filter dryers. Can you leave them in the system? Is it safe to leave them in the system? Okay, so what is a suction filter dryer doing? Okay, be very cautious because there is suction filters and there's suction filter dryers, okay? I will give you an example. Manitowoc Quiet Cube ice machine or CVD condensing units come with a suction filter. It is not a dryer. It's literally just a giant filter. Okay. It's a screen inside of it, and it just filters contaminants before they go to the compressor. So understand what they are. Just because you see something that looks like a dryer on the discharge line doesn't necessarily mean it's a dryer unless you know for sure, because it could be a muffler too. Okay, so understand what you're working on. Now, as far as suction filter dryers, what's the most important thing with a suction filter dryer? That's pressure drop. Okay, you don't want to create any unnecessary pressure drops in the system. Pressure drops can affect oil return, can affect all kinds of refrigerant velocity, all kinds of different things. So my personal opinion is that if you've installed a suction line filter dryer and it is not plugged up, it is not leaking, it doesn't have the potential of leaking, I leave it in the system. It's not doing any harm, okay? It's actually doing a little bit of help because maybe it's removing some potential acid from the system from a previous burnout or something like that, okay? But is there anything wrong with cutting a suction filter dryer out of the system if it doesn't need it? I personally don't think so, but every situation is going to call for something different, okay? Why is it there in the first place? Did it come from the manufacturer? Did someone install it after the fact? I have Tecumseh branded condensing units that have come, cold zone condensing units that came from the factory with suction line filter dryers in them. We just leave them in for the life of the dryer or unless something happens. Okay, so it really depends on your situation, but can you take a suction line filter dryer out of the system if you don't have any issues? Sure, as long as it's not there for a certain reason. Yeah, go to town, take it out. Always make sure that you have a liquid line filter dryer in there at all times though, okay? All right, let me see what else we got in here. I did mention, and I think it just posted it in there right now in the chat, is that Sporlan has a new webinar coming up talking about EEVs, and that is on the 22nd at 1 p.m. Central Time. There's a link from the Streamlabs moderator bot right now, so definitely register for that webinar, okay? Let me see what else we got in here. What else am I missing? Yeah, definitely, guys. If you guys can smash that like button, it would really, really help. We had like a little kerfluffle with the live stream, so I had to end it, and I'm pretty confident that's why the viewer count is so low, because a lot of people probably that I invited through emails and different things like that to the stream probably didn't realize that I restarted a new stream. So do me a favor, smash the like button, get that number up as high as possible. Ideally, I'd like to see that number up to 400 because it really helps out the stream to be able to be recognized by the algorithm and helps to grow the channel. Okay, that's another way that you guys can support it, is by simply just interacting in the video. A like or a thumbs down, either one is the same. Okay, just interaction is what they want to see. So please. All right, I had a video from a while ago that I had a seized on rotolock nut. I know exactly which video you're talking about, Zach, and I remember seeing your comment too. So would it have been bad to use a torch to break the nut free? No, not necessarily. But in that situation, I was working on a tiny reach-in cooler and I needed to get it going as fast as possible. So it was in a tight confined space, and the rotolock nut was really difficult to get to, and it was going to be cheaper and faster for me to just go ahead and swap out the compressor. And the weird thing is I actually still have that compressor sitting on the side of my house because I wanted, for some reason, I think I wanted to autopsy the compressor or something, because there was nothing physically wrong with the compressor. It was just leaking on the roto valve, if I remember right, and I couldn't get the damn nut off. And I mean, I was putting so much pressure that I felt like I was going to twist the male part of the rotolock nut off the compressor. So no, not necessarily. I mean, a torch wouldn't have been a bad idea to try it, but it was just going to cost less and be faster to get it operational. Oftentimes we run into these situations when we're working in restaurants where we have to kind of weigh out the replace the part or get it fixed as soon as possible. Or, sometimes it's a time thing. They're going into a busy dinner rush. They need their refrigerator back, and they don't mind spending an extra couple $100 if I can get it fixed faster. Swap out the compressor, call it a day. Okay. All right. Pro C says he had a good point. Customers don't want to pay to remove the suction dryer if they don't have to. If it's working fine, just leave it in. There's nothing wrong with it, as long as it's not getting restricted. Now, if there's a pressure drop across it, of course, whenever I do severe burnouts, I've shown it in videos before where I've had severe burnouts where I've had to come back after the fact and be like, hey, I put it in my quote. I'm coming back because this thing is bad. We need to change these dryers again. I've done it. Yeah. All right. Don't have beanies to give away yet. All right, let me see what else we got in here. Let me close this out. Okay, cool. Do I know any channels that can help with rack systems in grocery stores? Luis. There's a couple of them. My buddy, Rookie Refrigeration, Ruben Macias, he doesn't work for a rack company anymore, but he showed a lot of rack refrigeration on his channel, so you can definitely go look it up. Rookie Refrigeration. There's a couple other ones too, but I can't think of the names of them right now. How frustrating is going through a service call that had one thing leading to another? You know, it can be frustrating. I get that question a lot. A lot of people say, how can I spend so much time on my videos or at this particular job? But you have to remember something, that for the most part, my employees, they're not getting these weird, crazy calls. I typically take the really difficult ones and they take the easy ones. So most of my company is getting a couple service calls done a day. Whereas when I go out, you know, I'm usually getting 1 to 2 a day, if that, because I take the more difficult calls. So it's kind of part of the job. I'm kind of used to things turning into a disaster, and that's kind of in the way that I do things. I've always been kind of geared towards looking at the big picture. And I should step back. I haven't always been like that. I've made so many mistakes that I finally got sick of getting callbacks and different things that I started looking at the big picture, and I became the person and the technician that I am today, where I like to really look at things and, you know, get things 100% operational. Of course, I always include the customers in the decision-making process. And there's tons of stuff where my customers don't want to do the big picture repairs. Okay. I've said that and shown that in videos too. I quote the big picture repair, but sometimes they don't want to pay for it. So they get a small picture repair. You know, I mean, sometimes they just want you to solve the symptom and not necessarily the problem. All right. Let me see what else we got going on here. I already answered that one right there. All right. Have I ever threw an old compressor off the roof? Yeah, Jeffrey, I have. I have a technician that doesn't work for me anymore. I don't think he watches these live streams, but we still communicate a little bit here and there. Him and I were changing a 3 horsepower semi-hermetic one time on a walk-in freezer. And it was a walk-in cooler, and it was a big semi-hermetic guy. It took, 2.5 people to get it up onto the roof edge because it was heavy. And we had the brilliant idea to throw it off the roof. And that thing landed in the dirt because they had like a flower whatever area. And it landed in the dirt, but it landed next to a manhole of all things. This was a weird location, and there was a manhole for their grease trap right there. It landed next to the manhole. And because it landed on the dirt where it was at, it shifted the manhole over like 6 inches, like the lid like shifted it over. Yeah, you want to be really careful about dropping compressors off the roof, especially if you're dropping them on asphalt or concrete, because they're going to crack the concrete, break the asphalt. You're going to see some serious damage. So whenever possible, you want to rope those things down. I'm not a fan of throwing things off the roof because of the damage that can happen. You'd be surprised, the silliest stuff. You could be working at a shopping mall and you throw something off the roof, and then the shopping mall all of a sudden wants you to fix the asphalt because you cracked the asphalt. And it's like, for real? But, customers, you need to think about, when you're at these places, I've really gotten to the mindset of just, how would I want to be treated on this stuff? And it sounds so silly throwing something off the roof. But, when you throw filters off the roof, for instance, can the potential customers that are the patrons of that establishment see you throwing filters? Even if you're on the roof, can they see that? Because that looks like crap. That looks like trash. I was in a restaurant one time, and it wasn't a restaurant I was working at, and you can see a service technician walking through the restaurant, and he was dragging a box of filters right through the middle of the restaurant to go out the front door, and, to give him credit, he was probably waiting at the back door, and the manager probably didn't open it. So he was just like, I'm going to walk through the front of the restaurant because the manager wouldn't open it. But it's that kind of stuff, guys. Even if the manager is being a punk, even if someone's not opening the door for you, you don't drag that crap to the middle of the restaurant. So I always try to think about the patrons and the customer in general. And I try not to throw things off the roof, just try to be as polite as possible. All right. What am I missing in here right now? I'm not seeing anything there right now. Can't find any competent help. I need help very badly right now. I definitely need to hire an experienced service technician. And again, I still haven't bit the bullet on this one. I'm kind of afraid with the COVID crap because I kind of want to see what happens and how things go, because I don't want to hire someone to have to lay them off. So I'm just kind of waiting it out, but I definitely need to hire someone. Walk-in freezer defrost 45 minutes. How long should reach-ins? Reach-ins, I typically don't want to see a 45-minute defrost. So typically what I'll do on a reach-in cooler, again, it could change depending on your environment, but I typically like to do 15-minute defrost throughout the day. If I have to, I'll increase them to every 3 hours or something like that. But typically I want to see, every 4 hours a 15-minute defrost. But then in the middle of the night when nobody's in the restaurant, I like to do a good 45-minute to an hour-long defrost on that reach-in cooler. When nobody's in there, when all the doors are shut, just let that coil thaw out. That's my personal preference on the reach-in cooler. So typically do a staggered defrost throughout the day of no longer than 15 minutes. And then in the middle of the night, do a 45-minute to an hour, or maybe even like an hour an hour off, an hour on, and then another hour off before the customer gets there. But you always want to be very careful. I have some locations that one day a week, they get there at 5 a.m. So you don't want to defrost anywhere near that, because you'll get a phone call at 5 a.m. My reach-in cooler's down. My food's at 45 degrees or something like that. So got to be very careful about that. Can I get C38 and also use it to work inside residential calls and vice versa? Get a C20 and work refrigeration. Well, we carry a C20 and a C38, but we're not insured to work residential. So if you want to work on refrigeration systems, you need to have the proper one. And if you want to work on air conditioning systems, you need to have the proper one too. So, or duct work and stuff. I can't even remember, but you got to have the proper contractor's license, but then you also have to have the proper insurance. So like I said, I'm not insured to work in residential. My contractor's license would cover it, but not my insurance. Have I ever thrown a new tech off the roof? No, I've never thrown a new tech off the roof. I did have a new tech one time though, like on his first or second day working with me, he fell. He tripped over a piece of EMT, a 1/2-inch EMT conduit on the roof, and he landed on his arm and he caught himself. And then when he got up, he was running. He was a real heavy guy too, and he was running around screaming, holding his shoulder, screaming, "Oh, my arm, my arm!" And I was like, I was like, what just happened? Like, dude just tripped, and all of a sudden he's screaming that his shoulder, his arm, and he popped his shoulder out of the socket. And the whole time I'm sitting here thinking, how the hell am I going to get this guy off the roof? Like, his freaking shoulders popped out of the socket. And then he goes, hold on. He caught himself. He calmed down. He's like, hold on just a second. And then he just like pops his shoulder back in. He goes, it's all right. It happens all the time. And I remember thinking, dude, why didn't you tell me this? Like, what the hell? That was kind of funny. Kind of scary though, too, at the same time. On the solenoid for an oil separator, what powers this? Michael Lewis, I mean, it really depends on every situation. I would think that you should have some sort of a pressure differential controller or something like that, or a float valve on your oil separator. It depends. I mean, really depends on the situation, the rack that you're working on. You might have a float assembly. Who knows? So you'd have to look through the installation instructions. All right. Let me see. What would be the worst condition I ever found a commercial HVAC unit? Missing a condenser. Get a service call out there and you go out there and the condenser's completely missing. Yeah, I've been there. That's interesting. Tweakers got in there and ripped it off. Let me see. I'm not missing anything there. Hello to everybody that's new in here. Do me a favor and smash the like button, guys. It really helps out the stream. Yeah, crane him down. MIRA, it was really interesting. I drove by the other day, some restaurant, and the fire department was out there, and it was a closed down restaurant, and they were doing like practicing and stuff. And that's when I realized on the big hook and ladder trucks, they can actually use the ladder as a crane, because they had a crane strap coming off the front, and they were hoisting a basket with the ladder from the hook and ladder truck. So then actually I thought about that guy, the guy that hurt himself, because I've always wondered, like, how the heck am I going to get someone off the roof if they freaking break their leg or something, But yeah, those fire trucks, they can hoist the baskets up there with the ladder, which is pretty cool. Approximately how many miles do I put on my service vehicles per year? In the past, I used to put up a lot. Not anymore. I probably put now, because I stay pretty local in my service area. So I don't know, 60,000, 70,000, something like that. In the past, maybe not 70, maybe 50 or 60. I'd say 50 or 60,000 is what we put on our vehicles about a year. So in the past, when I used to live far away, I used to live an hour and a half away from the shop, I would put crazy miles on my vehicles. I was filling up every other day. It was insane. Let me see what else we got. Yeah, go ahead and ban. I'm fine. All right. Approximately how many miles do you put on? Oh, yeah, I already answered that question right there. Have I ever used one of those little red Diversitech nitrogen PERS braze tools? No, but I use the VN 500 by Western Enterprises, and it's a brazing purging thing or whatever. But I know what you're talking about. It's like a little purge chingus that you could put on your nitrogen regulator, and it's supposed to like keep the perfect flow so you can braze and different things like that. I've never used the Diversitech one though. So, all right, let's see what else. What is the operating temperature for heat pumps? Get it very cold here in the winter. Well, it really depends. You know, for the most part, a heat pump is not the ideal thing for an extremely cold area. But these newer heat pumps, Mitsubishi has some of them. They have computer controlled defrost and different things like that. It's not just a stupid little board. They've been doing really well with low temperatures. So they've been really, really working on the technology of the heat pumps to be able to operate better and better in the really, really low temperatures. But I'm not a super smart person when it comes to those because I don't deal with cold temperatures. So maybe some other people. But I know Mitsubishi has some great heat pumps on some of their mini split and VRF units. And some other people have some good ones that operate very well in the low temperatures too. Do I still use the thermal imager, and what one have I been taking and liking? So yeah, I still use a thermal imaging camera. It's funny, I kept saying I was going to make a video about it. I never did, but I've been testing out for like the last year and a half the FLIR C3, the FLIR 1 Pro, which is the silly camera that you connect to the bottom, and then also the Seek Shot Pro. So the FLIR C3 and the Seek Shot Pro are standalone cameras. And at first, I was really, for the first good 6 months, I was really digging the Seek Shot Pro. That was my favorite. But honestly, I've gone away from the Seek Shot Pro, and the FLIR 1 Pro, which is the one you plug in. It's a USB camera thing. You plug into the bottom of your phone. That's my favorite. Absolute favorite. It's super easy to use. The only thing about the FLIR 1 Pro, the only problem with it is if you have a case on your phone, like I have Otter cases on my phone right here, right? You got an Otter box on it. The FLIR 1 Pro won't fit into here. So what I actually have to do is pull the case off my phone like this. Just pull it down like that, pull the case off, and hook up the FLIR 1 Pro with the case pulled back like that. And it has a little dongle adapter thing. And that's how I use the FLIR 1 Pro on my phone. So I just have to peel the case back. But I love that camera. It's got such great quality. It records audio too, which is really big for me. I still use it when checking receivers and different things like that. So FLIR 1 Pro has been my go-to. And I think there's a link in the show notes of this video for a FLIR 1 Pro through TrueTech Tools. Do I use flashback arresters on my oxygen and acetylene tanks? Yes, I have flashback arresters on my hoses. It comes with the torch kits usually, and I always install them on there. Let's see what else. Have I worked on anything with CO2 refrigerant? No, I have not. Why do older capacitors last forever, but now they seem to be junky? Christina B. Because of the fluid that was installed or inside of them. The different types of fluids, they have since become cancer-causing fluids and non-environmentally safe fluids and different things like that. Now they just use like oils, castor oil, I think, is one of them that they use. So it really has to do with the fluid that's installed and the components that they're allowed to use in the capacitors that make them not last as long. But also, I will argue too that we have really crappy power in certain areas, especially here in Southern California. Short cycling, different things like that, I'm sure add to capacitors going bad as much as they do. Let me see what else. See what I'm missing here. I already answered that one. For those that are, I see this question come a lot, okay? For those that are interested in PCBs, there you go. So for those that are interested in getting into the trade, this trade needs your help, so get into it. Do whatever you have to do, okay? Just remember that this trade is not going to do anything for you. You're going to have to work hard to get everything out of this trade that you want to, okay? It's not a glamorous job. You know, you don't get to go home all shiny clean. You don't get to go home at 5 o'clock every day on the dot. You're going to work some overtime. That's just going to happen, okay? So understand, this is a working trade. I mean, you're going to bust your knuckles. You're going to bleed. You're going to get hurt. life happens. You're going to recover from it. You're going to move on. Just be as safe as possible, but definitely get into this trade because when things go south, you know, you have something to fall back on. We can fix things, okay? As an HVACR service technician, you have some plumbing abilities, you have some electrical abilities, you have refrigeration, air conditioning abilities, you have mechanical abilities. I mean, you really do carry a lot of tools in your belt, basically, and you get to fix a lot of different things, and it gives you a really cool skill set. So definitely get into the trade. On changeouts, am I having to upsize the equipment from warmer temps or keep it the same? Well, you got to be careful about upsizing the equipment. So right now they're really pushing some energy efficiency requirements on walk-in cooler and walk-in freezer equipment right now. So you got to be very, very careful for that. I don't know if you're talking about like global warming and stuff like that. No, you're not having to upsize for that because the temperatures really haven't changed. I mean, when I was a little kid, we used to have 120-degree days. We still have 120-degree days today. But as far as upsizing for temperatures, yes, you definitely want to make sure that you're on refrigeration equipment. It does kind of suck, but you need to size for the worst extreme temperatures for sure. Okay. But you also want to pay attention to, just because it says that it delivers this many BTUs at this particular temperature, that's also calculating runtime in too. So you don't necessarily have to upsize the equipment BTU capacity. You might sacrifice a couple extra hours of runtime to bring the temperatures down too. So if any of that makes sense to you. Next tool video in the works. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. I keep saying I want to do it. So should a new apprentice be on call? Brandon Walker. Yeah, I mean, typically I would throw my apprentices in an on-call situation, but I'm not going to let them go out there by themselves for very long. So once I get someone to a comfortable level where I know they know their way around tools and they know their way around dealing with customers, then I'll typically let an apprentice head to the job site before me, depending on the call. If it's like a really intricate call, I'm not even going to bother. But if it's a simple call, I'll let him head to the job site before me, give him about an hour to an hour and a half head start, and have him call me when he gets there. And then we'll just kind of walk through some steps. I like him to get his hands on it, kind of hear the noises, try to figure it out on his own. And then I'll go in and kind of say, okay, this is what you did right. This is what you did wrong. So definitely, I think an apprentice should be on call, not necessarily by himself, but yes, he should be on call. Let me see what else we got in here. Yeah, refrigerant frostbite's very dangerous. I've never been bit really hard, but I've definitely gotten some of it. So let me see. All right, guys. Well, I am going to wrap this up. I really, really appreciate you guys making it in here. We're going to, wow, this is awesome, guys. Do me a favor and smash the like button. It really does help out the stream. So like I said, the video that I released for Field Piece today, talking about their new clamp, that is a very small portion of a full-length video that will be released Thursday. So Thursday at 11:45 a.m., my normal upload time, there'll be a full-length video on a walk-in cooler that the very last, 4 minutes of the video will be what you guys saw talking about this clamp, but you'll see the whole system repair and everything. So what's my best non-disposable gloves in my opinion? Non-disposable gloves, I just go to Home Depot. They got these Gorilla Grip gloves. They're kind of throwaway gloves. They usually last about a week or two or something like that, and I usually buy them in a box of 50 at a time. They're nitrile. No, they're like super thick nitrile gloves though. And I use those, and I use them for a week or two and then throw them away. Alex, thank you so very much for that super chat, man. All right. That clamp needs to be made. Which clamp? You talking about this? The Field Piece clamp? It's made. It's released. You can buy it right now, if that's what you're talking about. All right. Oh, last thing. I will show you guys. I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek real quick. Hold on. So, let me pull this up real quick and I'll do a screen share. So I came out, I probably shouldn't show this to you guys, but I will. I came up with a new shirt design and it is going to be released, and I'll show you guys what it's going to look like here. So bear with me 1 second. Let me pull up this image and I will show you guys the new shirt design. So I'm waiting on some samples to come, and as long as the samples look good, this is going to be the new shirt design. So let me hit downloads. There we go. So tomorrow is when I should get sweater samples. So zip up hoodies. Let me pull this up real quick. Zip up hoodie is going to look like this. It's going to be a very simple zip up hoodie, nothing too crazy. I'm going to do a screen share. Hold on just a second. Let me turn this off. And let me figure out which screen to share. Hold on just one second. Let me turn that right there. There you go. So the zip up hoodie, what the heck happened to that? Oh, perfect. So the zip up hoodie is going to look like this. I'm going to do the screen share right now. So the zip up hoodie is going to be a very simple design that just says HVACR videos. I should be getting those samples tomorrow. If that turns out good, then I will order it. So those will be available very, very soon. Let me go ahead and turn this off and transition this over. And then I'll show you guys the new shirt design too. So hold on. Here comes the new shirt design. The shirt design is a little bit different, but it still shares some of the new stuff, but it has a really cool thing that I wish I would have done on the first shirt design. So I'm going to pass that one over there real quick. And this is going to be the new shirt design. So again, so long as the samples turn out nice, and what I really like about this new shirt design is the new added flag on the arm. I really, really dig the flag, and I really wish I would have put that on the very first shirt design. So yeah, this will be the new one. Again, permitting that the samples turn out good and stuff. So, and then I should be having some, once I get them in stock and stuff, I'll let you guys know. I'm hoping to have them by Christmas and stuff. And then as far as the hoodies and the beanies, I'll probably have those before Christmas. So thank you very much for that super chat, bud. I really appreciate it. Let me see. I don't have it yet to model anything. So let me see what else. How many times have I said I need a bigger clamp? Now I have it. That's right. Definitely have the new bigger clamp. That is definitely really nice. It took a while for them to come out with that, but it is definitely a plus that they finally have it, because it'll really help a lot of people on that. All right. Arc flash. Does it ever cross my mind? Yeah, it does cross my mind. It's things you got to be careful about. I do not do enough, wear enough PPE. I do not put on beekeeper suits. I really should. It's not something I have made a practice, but I really do need to get into that. Better lockout, tag out, arc flash, different stuff like that is stuff you definitely need to be worried about. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close this up, and really, really appreciate you guys making it in here. So I'm going to go ahead and cue up the outro music, if I can figure that out. Let's see if I can figure out how to do that. That's not that. And then let me go ahead and pull the intro picture, and I'm going to cue up the outro music. I really, really appreciate you guys, and we will catch you guys on the next one.